in 1852, the potlatch was banned. 1854, in that time, it was banned. It was a waste of time. It was impoverishing, self-impoverishing, you know, and it was wasn't economically and religiously the right thing to do, I guess, at that time. And the white missionaries and settlers thought the Indians were doing various kinds of things that were wrong, you know, deviltry or laziness or just giving away all their worth. And they also wanted to get us further down, to hold us further down. So they banned the potlatch. And what that happens is when you ban the potlatch, you ban totem poles. You ban the potlatch, you ban dancing, the giving of gifts. Indians went to jail for giving gifts and dancing for each other. And masks and regalia and things like that were confiscated and taken away and locked up. We're not going to let that happen anymore. You know, we carry it on. You know, we bring it back and let it. Anyway, the law was dropped in the 1880s, or in the 1952. I'm sorry, I got my facts wrong. It was in 1884 when it was banned, and then it was brought back, or just quietly dropped off the books as a law in the 1950s.
Well, there's a continuing controversy there, because I believe that the Canadian government, at least, still is holding a great many goods that the various groups involved want to get back, and that's still in the process.
Act, yeah,
still in the process.
Yeah, many tribes all over the Northwest Coast are trying to have their objects returned from museums, and someday it'll happen. You know, we get them all back.
This is
one of the ways of carrying a totem pole in these modern times. Some totem poles are either too heavy or they don't have enough folks. You know, a 40-footer that size would take probably 75 people to carry, you know, or 100 people to carry. And putting them up with cranes and other machinery seems to be the safer way when people are afraid of lawsuits or something, the totem pole falling on somebody. But carrying them is a lot of fun, I'm telling you. Carrying them is a lot of fun. And also raising them by hand gives you a feeling of community. It gives you a feeling like you really had something to do with it, even if you didn't carve the pole. You know? I understand why you need to use a crane, but I like using a rope much more.
This is obviously a hand-raised
yeah, this is a 10-foot pole that my son raised last September, and he was 13 years old, and he was the youngest ever to raise a totem pole.
That one looks a little bigger.
This is 42 feet. This one is also 32 feet. I'm sorry, 32 feet, and was raised last September to honor my grandfather. And the folks are walking down the street with that, heading for the raising site.
I have to say your grandfather's pretty popular there. A lot of folks involved.
Oh, he was quite a guy. And here you see raising a totem pole with ropes, and even people up on the roof to keep it steady in all directions. It's pretty scary with that type of raising too, as I said, because the pole, it doesn't go in the ground. It sits there, and then everybody's got to hold these ropes to make sure that it doesn't fall over while it's being bolted into a metal beam. This was a raising on that same week, right next to the larger pole.
This is up in Metlakatla?
This is in Metlakatla. It was a 4-day potlatch. We raised 3 totem poles. We fed 1,000 people a night. It was the best thing that culturally that's happened to my village since its inception.
Looks like you got it up freestanding there.
This one here, this particular pole was raised on the S'Klallam Reservation near Port Gamble in Washington State, near Kingston. This was back in 89, back in 89. Some poles we put into the ground. This is an example of a pole. Actually, this is in Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut. We've got poles kind of all over the place, but it all depends on the folks, you know. And look at these. These are house posts that are bolted into the pillars of a public building. My grandfather's pole was topped by a rainbow, and the figure holding the rainbow was my son's generation, remembering my grandfather's generation. My grandfather would have been 100 years old in 1994, and the pole is a memorial to him.
These are the same house posts?
These are the house posts, and these are in Sitka. We did those back in, I think, 85, 86. I come from a real proud culture. The Northwest Coast culture is a real proud culture. And things happen to our people. Things happened that we lost control of. The coming of Europeans was something that changed our whole way of life, and it reduced our population. The incoming culture brought disease, brought alcohol, brought guns, brought a shift in the economic base, and population dropped from 60, 80,000 people to probably a quarter of it what it used to be.
Well, I think the average, and I don't know if it's true so that far north, but the average that I've seen most frequently cited is somewhere between 90 and 95% overall in terms of population decline, which is of course beyond catastrophic.
Well, that's whole villages, you know. Yeah. That's everybody in a family, you know. And one of the reasons you can't carry on this kind of art or the culture is if you lose the people who know about it. How is it possible to carry it on? You know, my grandfather said during the Spanish influenza epidemic in 1918, the whole households surrounding his parents' home died, and there was, you know, funerals for 4 or 5 family members in consecutive days. You know, it was a hard thing. People were just overcoming the smallpox epidemic and went to the Spanish flu epidemic. It was that combined with you know, all the illegal alcohol, and the population went down so much that the villages had to move in together into consolidated villages, and that caused problems too because of chiefs and the strata of who was nobility, you know, and that kind of thing.
Well, I believe we've got a series of slides coming up that illustrate some of the things you're talking about historically. So why don't we take a look at those and talk about what we're seeing.
As I said, you know, our culture is a pretty proud culture. I think it was, you can put it up against Egypt and the Europe and, you know, the Far East in terms of how advanced it was, our social and political organization. Our villages were set up in no less a manner than any of those high European or Asian cultures. The arrival of missionaries like William Duncan, you know, who was, by the way, the most successful, if you want to call him that, missionary probably of all time, because he completely influenced our people into giving up our way of life, you know, and at least the part that I'm from that went to Alaska, and the church, the influence of the church persuaded Indians to give up their old ways and to turn their back on religion, their native religions like the shaman and the chief system, and wear button-down collars and bowler hats and things like that, you know. The medicine men held out for a while, but were more or less defeated by missionaries and medical doctors from the white culture.
The image we're seeing here, is that shaman with a mask?
That's a shaman in a curing pose, in his regalia. You know, shaman relied probably on superstition and his intuitiveness to be successful, you know, and the fear of the unknown by the people too. And when medicines came along, he had a hard time competing with that. You know.